Welcome to this week's xConnect Northwest, connecting you with the experts. I'm your host, Greg Mills, and today we are joined, and thankfully once again, by Dr. Sue Kitchell, a veterinarian from Moscow, Idaho. Well, does the warmer winter mean early arrival of bugs that target our pets? Dr. Kitchell is going to show us some signs to look for, give us some strategies as spring approaches. Now, before we get going, a reminder that you at home can chime in with your questions. All you have to do is connect with us on Twitter @NWPTV or use hashtag xConnectNW. On Facebook, search for Northwest Public Television, or by email at kwsutv@wsu.edu. Thanks for joining us once again. It is great to see you here, and we have an interesting winter that we've been going through here.
Or lack of winter.
Yeah, and as we talked about having you come onto the show for this appearance, we were talking about what that might mean for pet owners. So far, it's been extraordinarily warm, and you hear the conversations about flowers coming up and people planting early. Well, one of the things that happens as a part of that are the bugs that we see in our gardens and the bugs that bug our dogs. I should say that we have Rosie here as well.
We have a dog with us. Well, thanks for having me again, Greg. Certainly enjoy coming. And yeah, I think the lack of winter, first off, is messing up quite a few dogs in their shed out season. We weren't going to address that today, but I got to let you know my dog is dropping his coat right now, and he's supposed to in June. So things are a little different, and I think we're seeing that with the bugs. Particular fleas, saw them all winter a little bit at our clinic, and then the ticks, we heard down by the river there was one last week, and then just not sure about the mosquitoes, heartworm, and then potentially snakes. So I think we're going to have an accelerated year. I don't quite know what that means for treatment. We're going to have to be a little bit flexible, and I had some owners starting to apply some products already. So we can chat about that a little bit.
Do we see years like this in cycles, or is this one particularly strange?
I mean, I think we do, honestly. I can't remember, Greg. Can't remember all the years I've been vets, but 9 or 10 years ago we had a winter like this too. I don't remember. The thing about the insects and the bugs, which all of us find interesting, is they are becoming hardier, and so they're surviving colder temperatures. I mean, I have never treated for fleas living here, but these last 2 years we've seen it year round, so I've started treating year round for fleas. So I think the insects are becoming smarter, or they're just manipulating our environment better. I'm not sure.
So when we talk about the warmer weather at an earlier time, I guess, or just more of it throughout the winter, whatever you want to say about it. We talked a little bit before we got going about snakes, and there was one of the questions that came in about snakes. And is there something that you need to be concerned about, or particularly concerned about when it warms up like this? Gets people out, moving around, hiking, getting into the woods maybe a little earlier than they would normally. That's it. So what do you think? Well,
the question is, are the snakes going to come out of hibernation sooner? From the research around here, they're in hibernation until about April. So now you got, the rivers have come up. You've got a lot of different climate changes down by the river, the warmness. So are the snakes going to come out of hibernation next month? Oh, great. Obviously, people that travel in snake country should be aware of snakes. Animals are leave them alone for the most part. I mean, that's how most animals approach snakes, unless I'm going to try and eat them. And then, of course, I would think owners should know that about their pets. There are tons of snake websites that are very interesting about what you can do for your dog, whether he wears a bell, you wear a bell, or you stay away from certain areas around the river. Obviously they're under rocks, the rattlesnakes. Keep them away from that if you can. Keep them on a leash. Maybe that's the best thing you can do until they learn about snakes. But there are actually snake workshops that teach your snake how to avoid them, down in Boise in particular, in bigger snake country. So there are websites, you guys, for all that information if you want to find out some snake avoidance. What my hubby and I talked about mainly was probably keeping them on a leash. Until the snakes are back where they belong, which I don't know how it'll be this year.
Well, I mean, at some point it gets too hot for us to be in a lot of the places that they are, and they're the heck out of the way when the hot weather comes, so we don't run into them too often. I mean, I can count on one hand easily the number of times I've ever run into rattlesnakes, and I've hiked in these regions around here for many years.
Have you? Well, that's good. And I mean, we do see the rattlesnakes, especially later in the summer, but your veterinarian can tell you all about the rattlesnake vaccine. There is a vaccine out there for rattlesnakes. I think it covers probably all of the Northwest. They don't have particular vaccines for different snakes, but talk to your veterinarian about it too. I mean, we do have clients that live right next to the river, and we do vaccinate those pets. Okay. So talk to your vet about that.
Well, let's start talking about a couple of things. Let's start talking about fleas and ticks, the things that we see potentially in our everyday lives and just in homes and no matter where we are in the region. And we'll talk a little bit about heartworm too, but let's grab Rosie and head over. Let's talk about fleas and ticks from the perspective we're starting to see them, and what is it going to mean for us when we do start to see them in our homes, and how do we approach them? No matter when they start coming along, what are some of the options for approaching the fleas and ticks in our homes?
Well, there are tons of products, you guys, for fleas and ticks. And actually, the latest research from some Banfield pet hospitals is that the Northwest is having a problem with cats. The one species, we think about them, of course, and they're in our house, but they are the ones that are doing the most roaming. So it turns out that cats are the most susceptible species, they say, in the Northwest for fleas, bringing them in the house. So you guys, there are lots of flea and tick products. There are oral products they can take. There are collars they can wear, and then there are ointments you can put on the skin. And Rosie here is actually due for her monthly ointment, so we were going to do it for you guys because it's really easy. Okay. They just sit there, and you just open the hair, and you go ahead and put your little product on. Hang on, pretty girl. Now there are dogs.
She's ready for a close-up.
She's ready.
Wanting to make sure she looks good for TV.
It is odd. She looks great for TV. She's a natural. So you guys, that is how you do that, and that lasts for 30 days. So those products are really nice. Then there's the little dogs that have skin reactions to those products. Right. They tend to be some of these dogs that don't have a lot of hair or have sensitivity to the environment are sensitive to the product because it can be a chemical. So then they made oral ones. So there are also pills that a dog can take that last for 30 days. Okay. I would say in general, Greg, I would look for a product that covers both. Most of your products cover both flea and ticks. So we just tend to do the one that covers both. Ticks are kind of becoming a problem too. I don't know about you, but a lot of us go out in the woods. And in April and May, that's when we can see the ticks. This year, it could be earlier, but I think people could be going camping earlier this year too. I mean, so they're going to be out there.
Yeah, and if you've got people who predominantly, maybe just go camping a couple times a year, maybe a couple times every couple of years, they're not really thinking about that. People go all the time, I had to get a tick off my dog.
Sure, well, because they have it too.
Right, well, it could be.
Right.
But for people who don't have a whole lot of experience with it, what are some of the things you're looking for with ticks in particular when you've got your pets in the outdoors?
Well, ticks for sure, typically, don't quote me on this, but they tend to go around the head and the neck region. Okay. So for sure, and that's, I think, on people too. So for sure, once you get back from your trip out in the woods, you want to check. They really like to get behind the ear there. And they'll start swelling up within 24 hours so you can feel them. Checking behind the ear. My border collie used to always get it around his neck. And then occasionally they'll get it on the chin there. We had one dog that had one attached up on the eye. So they tend to do the facial region. So when you get back from your outing, it's checking them. Okay. And if you see a tick, you guys, you need to remove it. I use my hands. Most people probably put on gloves, or you can use a pair of tweezers. You just want to grab that tick as close as you can to the skin and then pull real gently. Okay. Most of the time you pull out hair too. It hurts the dog a little bit, but that way you get the whole thing. If you don't wear gloves and it ruptures, they say that liquid inside that tick can be kind of dangerous. So that's why some people use tweezers. Okay. And then just gently remove it and then just watch that spot for a week or so.
So just as close as you can.
Yep. Huh? And I just pinch it and pull. And that's when you pull some hair and sometimes some skin. Yeah. And the dog will react. They'll kind of flinch a little bit and then you're done. If you have 100 of those to do, I would suggest you use a product. That, the ointments, what happens is once the tick feeds, the tick will die and fall off. Okay. For those products.
But it'll chase them out. And,
right.
And it's a little different process. So.
You got it.
Because there are so many different ways that people have taken ticks out, or at least they say that they've taken ticks out. It involves lighters and, all sorts of different crazy stuff.
Oh my God, dropping rubbing alcohol in it. I mean, I think all those things might hurt the pet. So just gently pulling it off. And if you really live in an area with a lot of ticks, because they transmit disease, you should probably use a product. Yeah. Okay. And they can last about a month.
Let's talk a little bit about, there's a question in here about heartworm. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about heartworm. Well,
we just covered Rosie for heartworm too, you guys. A lot of these products cover a multitude of problems. Heartworm is carried by a mosquito. And we don't actually have that mosquito living here in Moscow, Idaho, or Pullman, but it's probably going to be. And if you travel a lot, it does live coastal California, potentially Oregon. We're not quite sure. Mosquitoes are also hardy little boogers, and they change their lifestyles too. So if you're going to be traveling, especially going east, we definitely do heartworm preventative. If you're going to be staying west, I'd like you to talk to your vet and talk about where you're going and what time of the year, because mosquitoes aren't necessarily out in December, so you don't always need to treat. So that is a discussion about you and your veterinarian about where you're traveling, because pets are traveling so much these days.
Yeah, and I think it's safe to say that a lot of pet owners may not know a lot about heartworm. It's a conversation they probably just need to have, not coming at it with a lot of knowledge.
I would agree, and I'll just let you guys know for sure, cats are the one species we cannot treat once they have heartworm.
Okay.
Heartworm is a life-threatening disease, and dogs we can treat, but cats we cannot. So it's very important that they are on a preventative monthly during mosquito season.
What about real close to home? Let's talk dog parks, another question. Hey, I take my dog to the dog park all the time.
Right.
What are the precautions that I should think about dog park-wise? Catching, obviously, you're intermingling with other people's dogs.
Right, and that's it. I mean, dogs are becoming so social. I guess if I would cover my butt, so to speak, and I would protect them starting potentially this year in February. I mean, the thing about a lot of these diseases is social can create, oh, a flea's going to jump here or a tick's going to jump there. Maybe not a tick, but more likely a flea. And so in those respects, you worry about the socialness. So I would probably treat with, I mean, my favorite is Frontline that I use once a month, usually starting in April, and I do it for 4 months. So we may start in February. And I would probably do that until it cools off, maybe November, if you're going to the dog park daily for sure.
Okay. Now, effectiveness, if we were to back up just a little bit, or sidestep, however you want to look at it. You were, putting, you need some attention.
She's begging, yes.
The collars and the treatments. You didn't sound like you really leaned any particular direction, but what's effective and how is it effective?
You know, as far as our office goes at this point, Greg, we are doing well on the Revolution, the Frontline, and we're using this, I think it's called Perfecta, a new oral tablet for some of these little dogs. We haven't heard complaints, of course, not yet this year. Last year we had a tick load go through the Frontline within 3 weeks. That means the dog was heavily exposed, and the ticks came back within 3 weeks. It's supposed to last 4 weeks.
Okay.
So really, part of that might depend on where you're living and your exposure. Yeah. I think pretty darn good. I mean, we've had a good success rate. I'd say you'd have to probably get to your vet clinic and ask them which product they recommend and which they support. And different regional areas have different success too.
Sure. I was going to say we live in a pretty rural area around Washington State University, but our viewers in the Tri-Cities area, a completely different thing.
Right, different. And we found the Frontline works really well for our ticks. Over in Idaho too, I usually tend to go east to here camping, but over on the west side could be different. Yeah, you've got to check with your local vet there and just see what products they're carrying.
And I suppose as far as just exposure is concerned, when you're having guests over, that's the same sort of thing as the dog park thing.
I would think so, yeah. You're talking people guests or animal guests?
Well, people who bring their animals as guests, I guess, so it's all of the above.
Be careful. Might introduce something you don't want, but yeah, I mean, obviously those people should be protective. I think people are becoming a lot more aware of insects and bugs. I mean, we're just exposed throughout the news, I mean, just in general, we're becoming a very well-aware, the CDC has got a great website for the animal parasite stuff to learn more about it for sure.
Are there differences in the way we think about larger animals or smaller animals like Rosie here? Is in the way that we treat? Or?
Well, probably, yes. And in fact, that's why a lot of these products are becoming different, you guys, is they have a lot of tick products and flea ticks for the 20-pounders, but not necessarily the 4- and 6-pounders like her. So that's where these oral medications are becoming. And I don't know, she doesn't spend too much time outside. So I suppose your bigger dogs that live outside, they definitely need to be checked more often, or you do the products on them just religiously. I mean, a lot of people, farm dogs, they do that heartworm preventative every month because it's also a dewormer. Okay. When you're exposed to all kinds of parasites in the poop also, you want that covered too. You are not, though, little one, are you? Well, you're on the couch a lot.
Yes. Thank you, Rosie. We appreciated you coming here today. And thank you, Dr. Kitchell.
You're welcome, Greg. Thanks for having me.
We thank Dr. Kitchell for joining us today. And thanks for you at home for your questions and for helping us out. By all means, send us your show ideas. When you come up with those fabulous show ideas, we'd love to go down that road and put something together for you. Remember, you can stay connected with us all week. Tweet us, like us on Facebook, add us to your circle on Google+, or you can email us at kwsutv@wsu.edu. If you missed any part of today's show, don't worry, you'll be able to catch that online at nwptv.org. Next time on xConnect Northwest, we're going to talk with Chris Finch, a Pullman area real estate professional, about our current housing market. She's going to join us live from our Pullman studios. And if you have questions, feel free to connect with us online. I'm Greg Mills. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time on air and online.